This is the place where NFL legends live on and share their stories. This is the place for our spotlight on the positive segment, sharing what's good in the world of sport. This is also the place for the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. This place I speak of, Thursday Night Tailgate. Let's say hello to your hosts, Chris-Mascaro and bob-lazzari. Guys, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate, your home for interviews and conversations with legends, players, and coaches from around the NFL. Chris-Mascaro and bob-lazzari here to do our best to brighten up the next couple of hours for you. TNT is brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, Coastal Orthopedics, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, and our wonderful partners over at the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. Tonight, Bob and I, we've got some great guests and some great stories coming your way. First up, we're going to be joined by NFL Stats Guru and TNT Hall of Famer Russell Baxter. Then former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. He'll join us just like he does every single week here on TNT. Following Tony, we'll get a return visit from BC Lions wide receiver Marco Iannuzzi. And former Patriots and Cowboys Pro Bowl wide receiver Terry Glenn going to be back with us. It's been a long time since we've had Terry on the show, so looking forward to catching up with Terry as we kick off the next hour. And then we'll round out the show by talking with Gay Culverhouse. When you remember her father, right? Hugh Culverhouse was the owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Gay was president of the Bucs for a few years and president of Notre Dame as well. So she's doing some great work now with the NFL Alumni Association, or I should say just the former players, trying to help them deal with the concussions and all the injuries that they are dealing with later on in life. So really looking forward to catching up with Gay as we round out this show about 90 minutes from now. So we're going to talk to a lot of folks. We're going to have a lot of fun. So please sit back, relax, and let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours. But first, we'll bring in my co-host and start the show the best way we possibly can, and that's by talking with Mr. bob-lazzari. Bob, how you feeling tonight, my friend? How you holding up?
How are you? We're doing okay, Chris. This is a rough week, but again, I'm glad the phones are working tonight.
Yeah, blizzard, right? How did the blizzard work out up in your area?
Well, it was the wildest thing, Chris, because if you were in southern Connecticut, you probably I say only, and for other people in parts of the country, you could probably sympathize, but only 4 or 5 inches. And other parts of the state got over 2 feet. So depending on where you were, I'm toward the central eastern part, probably about 13 inches, Chris, but it was not the accumulation. It was the kind of snow it was. It started off as the powdery stuff, blizzard conditions for sure, and then it started to sleet. I mean, I was outside in that sleet while that wind was blowing. It was all I can compare it to is just prickers blowing in the wind. I mean, it was just brutal. And then it kind of started to freezing rain, and then kind of all rain, and then back to snow at night. It was the most wicked combination as far as roads and all that. And right now we're just left with an iced-over New England. There's just rocks and balls of ice all over the place. And if you just check out some pictures of anyone that posts around here, it's been an incredible ride. But thought it would be probably more snow, but I didn't expect as bad conditions as far as the changeovers and everything. So just glad to have it in the rear-view window. Let's hope that's the worst we see for the rest of the year, Chris.
Yeah, no doubt, Bob. I mean, it sort of sounds like you get that wet, heavy snow and with the rain on top and the sleet and everything else. Got to make shoveling, make a shovel full of whatever you want to call that slush and snow mixture. That's got to feel like 100 pounds.
Yeah, and that was it. I mean, I don't want to sound dramatic, but I've been up here all my whole life, and that was probably the heaviest snow, not the heaviest snowfall, the heaviest snow that I ever had to move. And people ask, why don't you use a snowblower? Why don't First of all, the snowblower wouldn't have helped you because this was like shoveling rocks. And again, there's such clearing that you have to do, and snow blowers won't help you. So, but yeah, that was the worst, Chris. Everyone called it the heart attack type snow. It's not good, but people have to continue living here. Let's put it this way: if you didn't do any snow removal, you're probably still stuck in your house right now and haven't left yet. So, I'm glad it's in the rearview mirror again, and I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. So let's get on with our new segment, Bob's Take, and let's go around the league a little bit. Bob, get your thoughts on some things, and we'll start right in your backyard up there. The Patriots have made a number of moves so far this season, made some trades, signed some high-dollar free agents, which is sort of very un-Patriot-like. They've added Brandon Cooks. We talked before about Dwayne Allen coming over. Stephon Gilmore now for a high-dollar defensive back they brought in. Coney Ely they traded for with the Panthers. They got Lawrence Guy and Rex Burkhardt, running back over from Cincinnati. So, those guys in. What's out is their first round and their second round draft pick. Tackle Sebastian Vollmer, he's gone. Outside linebacker Barkevious Mingo, he's gone. Logan Ryan, he's gone. Martellus Bennett, right? He's gone to Green Bay. Jabad Sheard, he's gone. And so it doesn't. Like I say, Bob, this is very un-Patriots-like. They don't currently have now a pick in the first or the second round. Their first pick in the draft is going to be early in the third round. They ended up re-signing Dante Hightower, right? We talk about high-dollar free agent, surprised at the amount of money that they gave him to come back. 4 years, $43.5 million, $19 million guaranteed. So, Bob, are you surprised to see the Patriots sort of loading up on some big-name, high-dollar, a couple of high-dollar free agents, making the trades that they're doing, which, like I say, is typically what we see other teams doing, not what we see the Patriots do?
Well, Chris, all those names you mentioned, Hightower was kind of a no-brainer. He's your defensive capman. Yeah, he was courted by a couple other teams, but they ended up giving him the 4-year deal. He is their captain, and that was a good signing. The other guys you mentioned, there's a lot of players there, Chris. And I am not the type, and I never will question anything that front office does because they just make the right move. So I'm not going to say this is, out of the Patriot realm or anything. It's kind of like they always have something up their sleeve. Those guys you mentioned, Burkhead, Guy, Cooks, Chris, with a good quarterback, him and Allen, they're going to be good. Allen, of course, will be behind Gronkowski, but my goodness, those who thought that letting Martellus Bennett go, this team always has something up their sleeve. They know exactly what they're doing. Of course, Logan Ryan, they signed a couple cornerbacks in his place. Vollmer, I could guarantee they got the best years out of him that they could, and they know exactly when to part ways with guys, whether it's financial or physical. So, all these are all good players. I don't see anybody great there, but that's what the Patriots want. They want good players that fit in. And obviously they think they could, but I think Cooks as a wide receiver is going to be a star here.
Let's move on to a couple of other stories, Bob. Tony Romo still sitting there in Dallas. Brock Osweiler, he's been exiled to Cleveland, and who knows what his future is going to be. It may or may not be in Cleveland. I'm hearing more and more that it's not going to be in Cleveland, so we'll see down the road where he ends up. So Texans quarterback, Bob. We thought Tony Romo was a given. We heard, leading up to the free agency opening period that he was either going to be let go or traded. Like I say, that hasn't happened. So when you look at the Houston Texans, who might just be a good quarterback away from making a deep run into the playoffs, who do you think that ends up there as their quarterback, Bob?
Yeah, this is a crazy situation, Chris. There's websites down in that Dallas area that are actually considering this Tony Romo held hostage, and they're doing day 5, day 6, and telling you the latest that it's basically a chess game, Chris. They're trying to drive up the price for a trade. They know they have a very valuable guy that teams want. They're just waiting to see who would make that first move. They want to get a lot in return. Don't know if the Texans can do it. Many people who are following the draft, Chris, next month are saying no matter what happens, the Texans are probably going to pick that Texas Tech quarterback, Mahomes. Now, is he going to be a starter in the league? I don't know what their plans are, but they said no matter what, they like the guy. He's a Texas guy, and so that's their plan. But until, again, there's really no way to see how this is going to shake out. It's who basically puts together a trade first, and that Dallas likes. Dallas they're like the cat that ate the canary right now. They're standing right there waiting for somebody to call them. Jerry Jones is like that, and give Romo credit. went on Instagram, thanked the fans, and now he's kind of in limbo. But he knows he's valuable. He's going to make money somewhere, Chris. And I'm following this as close as ever. I thought he was a shoo-in to stay in the state of Texas and maybe go there. But again, it's all up in the air now. Maybe we'll know more in the next week or two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys do, sort of a Kenny Rogers situation, right? Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, to see what they end up doing with Romo. Whether they continue to hold him and see if someone comes along as we get a little bit closer to the draft, right? We're about 6 weeks out from the draft, to see if they come along and someone gives them a sweetheart deal for Romo, or if they continue to hold him beyond that and we get to June, July as training camps start to open, and do you keep Tony Romo on the roster into training camp to see if somebody has an injury, kind of a la what the Vikings had to do last season with Sam Bradford, trying to go that far. That would seem like a heck of a poker face to hold them that long all the way into training camp to see what happens. But I guess the Cowboys are under no cap constraints right now to have to do anything. That I would think that would change once you get to the draft, and now you're trying to sign your draft picks. That might start to kind of bump up against some things. But yeah, this is an interesting strategy. It is going to be interesting to see how it ends up playing out. So we got a couple of weeks to the draft, so we'll see between now and then. Bob, the Ravens are another team that, and I'm glad to scratch my head trying to figure out what the Ravens are doing, because, it doesn't make any sense to me at this point, and I hope every decision that they ever make is the wrong one. But, they haven't signed a wide receiver yet, to help Joe Flacco out, no one to replace Steve Smith. They've lost their starting fullback. They cut their center, Elvis Dumervil and Ladarius Webb, two of their main guys on defense. Both of those guys have been released. They've lost a total of 9 guys so far, and only have added 2. What do you make of what's going on in Baltimore?
Well, you get the feeling that, Chris, they've had enough with being a 500 team. It just doesn't fly down there for that franchise. We already discussed what they're paying a guy like Flacco, and you and I agreed that this is not the kind of guy that can do it all himself. He's going to need, every year he plays, he's going to need a very good surrounding cast. And if you don't have a better than average surrounding cast, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a team that basically is going to go 8-8, and they're basically mail it in at the end like they did. But that's a team. Again, you're right, Chris. I mean, they're not doing anything that stands out at you. I mean, they did make Brandon Williams the highest paid nose tackle out there. Mike Wallace on the downswing of his career and still can play decently, Chris, but they need that other receiver. People think that in the draft they're probably going to go for the tight end from down south. So this is a team that's got to think, do we want to rebuild? Do we want to tear it down? Everything revolves around Flacco, so they have to get some good players in place. And you're right. I mean, it doesn't help a guy like Dixon goes out and, they have suspensions and this and that. They just can't afford that stuff happening, and they're already dealing with that with the 4-game PEDs on Dixon. So, for the Raven fans out there, they're in a very, very strange transitional period. It's always a tough division, and right now they still look like just a 500 team to me, Chris.
When you think about Elvis Dumervil being let go, and then we learned a couple of days ago, right? DeMarcus Ware decides to retire from Denver. It would be interesting to see if Dumervil ends up kind of reunited back there and taking the spot. He had it. He's gone. DeMarcus Ware takes that spot. Now DeMarcus Ware retires. It would be interesting to see if Dumervil ends back, in Denver where it started and back in his old role in his old position, for a year or two. I know he has struggled with some injuries. I think he only got in about 6 games last year, 3 sacks. But it would be interesting to see where he ends up and if that sort of round robin effect ends up going into place. Your thoughts on Dumervil, where he might end up, and do you think Denver makes logical sense?
It does make sense, because to be reunited, and the guy still looks like he can play, and I'm sure other teams would covet a guy like that, including New England. I always have New England in the equation, because they're always looking at veterans that have proved themselves and may not have the most value of anybody, but still somehow they can get him in there. And don't count out New England's ability to trade during the draft. You know how it works, Chris. They just amaze me when they come out of every draft smelling good. So, but yeah, Dumonville's still good, but I agree, man. Denver looks like the place for him.
One more, Bob, before we move on. And when you look at the quarterback situation in San Francisco, right, and the prospect, we've been hearing, all off season, what's going to happen with Colin Kaepernick. We thought that he's another quarterback that would be let go by now, and that hasn't happened yet. But you look at what they're doing. They've signed both Bears quarterbacks. Oh, by the way, both Bears quarterbacks not named Jay Cutler, right? They brought in Brian Hoyer on a 2-year deal. They brought in Matt Barkley. I don't think either one of those guys can be the long-term solution for San Francisco. And maybe they draft early at the top of the draft. They got the number 2 pick, so maybe they go quarterback early and let that person develop for a year or two behind either Hoyer or Barkley. But Bob, do you expect that San Francisco continues to look on the free agent market for a quarterback? Someone, could they bring in a Brock Osweiler if Cleveland jettisons him? Or do you expect that they're going to address the quarterback situation either with a number 2 pick or at the top of the second round?
Great question, Chris. I think San Francisco has pretty much painted themselves in the corner where a guy like Osweiler would look very, very attractive. I think they would take anybody right now who has had a little bit of success in the NFL, albeit so little. They would take a guy like that. But you're right, drafting a number 2, Chris, but you see still, according to the draft people and the draft boards out there, it's not saying that they're going to go for a quarterback. They're looking at a defensive line. That's what they're doing. But you're right. I mean, guys like Hoyer. So who do you go for, Chris, in the draft? I don't see anyone there even 2 years from now who you can build a franchise around. So they are in a tough spot. I expect them to be very, very active on draft day, trying to pull something. Osweiler might be part of it. You brought up that name. He's a guy there that has a home but really doesn't, and San Francisco needs someone in there with at least a tiny bit of pedigree to at least make it look good. Because if you go to war with Bobby Hoyer as your starting quarterback next year and not much in the way of a backup, it's not a good situation.
I agree with that. All right, that was this week's Bob's Take segment. So great stuff out of you as always, Bob. All right, everyone, like we do every week here when we kick off Thursday Night Tailgate, we want to tell our military personnel that are listening in around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, thank you. Thank you for doing what you do to protect all of us and our way of life. To our broader audience, we certainly thank you for being a part of the show as well, and we hope you'll join us in thanking the brave men and women that are out there serving in our military. And if you happen to see one of them out in your daily lives, right, wherever you might be, grocery store, airport, restaurant, please stop for a moment and tell those folks thank you. They are our true heroes. We also want to thank our veterans for your service and the sacrifices that you and your families have made for us over the years. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Big thank you as well to Sean Cruz and the great folks over at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It is such an honor for us to have Thursday Night Tailgate as a part of your network. You can find our show by going to armedforcesradionetwork.org. And veterans, please continue to check out globalvoiceforveterans.org for news and articles that I'm sure you're going to find both interesting and beneficial for you because they're geared specifically for you. Again, globalvoiceforveterans.org. TNT is sponsored by Kyvan Foods. NFL star Reggie Kelly brings his authentic flavor of traditional Southern cooking to market with his Kyvan Foods products. They are made with the finest ingredients. Kyvan Foods invites you to appreciate the goodness of the exceptional flavors in their salsas, their sauces, apple butter, and other fine products. Make Kyvan items a part of, your tailgating needs, your home gating needs. As we, now we're into baseball season, right? We've got the NCAA, right? We got the tournament going on. As you're tailgating and home gating, watching those games, please make Kyvan a part of your spread. The taste is unbelievable. It's available through Walmart.com, at select Kroger stores, or order online through Amazon or Kyvan's website itself at Kyvan82.com. And Kyvan is spelled K-Y-V-A-N. TNT is also sponsored by Dr. Peter Candelora and his great team over at Coastal Orthopedics. Folks, if you're an athlete, a weekend warrior, or anybody dealing with, injuries and discomforts in your joints, whether it's in your knees, your shoulders, your hips, or any of your other joints, please don't just live with it. Do what other athletes do to get relief, and that is contact Dr. Peter Candelora. He can get you back to enjoying life. For more information or to schedule a consultation, visit them online at athleteinjuries.com. That's athleteinjuries.com. Baseball season, right? It's kicked off. We got spring training games going on. If you love the game of baseball, you've got to go check out the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. They were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame. The museum, it's a very cool experience for everybody in your family because you get to go walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make every year. And they've been doing it now for 132 years. Don't miss the Bat Vault. You hear me bragging about that every single week here on TNT because you get to go in there and hold some of the game's greatest legends, game-used bats that they had. Guys like Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go to sluggermuseum.com. All right, now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line and making his 14th appearance on the show, if you can believe that, is one of our TNT 2015 Hall of Fame class members and NFL Stats Guru Russell Baxter. And I'm very confident when I say this that nobody on the planet knows more about the teams and the players and the stats around the NFL than Russell does. Be sure to check out his website, profootballguru.com, and make sure you follow him on Twitter, @BaxFootballGuru. And by the way, Russell is a 10 times better person than he is a stats guy, and like I said, he's the world's best stats guy, so that tells you what kind of person Russell is away from the game as well, and we're glad to have him back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Russell, thanks for coming back on the show. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Russ.
I'm great. I don't know if I would get that endorsement from some Redskins websites on Facebook right now, but I appreciate the kind words. Well, I don't often venture into doing pieces, guys, and where I'm trying to explain. Listen, let me cut to the chase here, okay? I threw this out about a week ago on I can't remember whose radio show it was, and I've done it several times since. And I know, by the way, you can ask me any question any time. I'm just going to go off here for a second.
Go ahead.
There's been so much talk about Tony Romo and Denver and Houston and the quarterback situation. I heard you alluding to Colin Kaepernick of what's going to happen with him and so on. There's some unsettled situations around the league. I am now, one of my new gigs is I am the Redskins writer for Pro Football Spot. And, I do about 20 pieces a month for them. And so I put out a piece which is, it was based on a radio interview I did. And to me, that it's a common sense thing. I'm not predicting it. I'm not saying it should happen. I'm not saying it will happen. But this was my thought. If you're the Houston Texans and you really are looking for a quarterback, why would you get a stopgap guy when you could possibly get a long-term guy? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you have in mind?
Oh. Now, you've also unloaded Brock Osweiler and opened up some cap room. By the way, for people out there who love movies, this is the equivalent of Richard Pryor and Brewster's Millions. Okay? I'm sure both of you get that, right?
Yes.
You got to spend money to win money, okay? If you've never seen the movie, you'll figure it out. So I floated out there, and again, it's just theory. Why would you trade for Tony Romo? A, you got the injury bug. He's played 5 games in 2 years, 4 starts. B, he's been in the league since 2003, so he's obviously got some mileage on him. So if you are going to actually go after a quarterback, how about Kirk Cousins?
Okay.
Now, you would have thought I orchestrated the trade, according to some people. Okay? My entire point is that if you are going to swing a deal, why would you get a Band-Aid when you can get surgery? Okay? To me, it would make much more sense to swing a deal. Now, it would be tough for them. Obviously, they don't have a second-round pick because they gave it to Cleveland for taking Osweiler off their hands. So the reaction has just been funny because it's not often I do a connect the dots piece, for lack of a better word. I just might. It shows you the passion of the Washington Redskins fans. Somehow they felt that me writing this piece was inviting a trade. Not everybody. It's something I've been dealing with for 2 days, and it's just funny. I mean, there's obviously a lot of information that goes on out there. I cited a couple of the sources, that he signed the tender, and that's the key. If you're a franchise player and you don't sign the tender, you hold the cards. Now that Kirk has signed the tender, they theoretically could deal him. For instance, keep an eye on Trumaine Johnson, the cornerback out with the Rams. He signed his tender. Some people out there don't think he fits Wade Phillips' defense, so now you can trade him. Now, if he was a franchise player and someone signed him to an offer sheet, you have to give up 2 number ones. Nobody wants to do that for Trumaine Johnson. That's not a knock on him. That's just a hefty price for any player. So now you get it. Listen, we're getting ready to see something similar to this with Malcolm Butler and the Saints. Okay? He's not a franchise player. He's a restricted free agent. The rules still hold. You can't trade a player unless he's under contract. Okay, this is how Aeneas Williams went from the Cardinals to the Rams. It's a similar thing. But apparently, I'm getting a lot of brothers from Kirk Cousins stuff.
So, Bill, what's the consternation? Are Redskins fans that sold that, hey, Kirk Cousins is our guy, he's going to be our guy for, the long term, why would we ever even consider trading Kirk Cousins? What's their reaction?
Yeah, I think it's more that. And listen, I got to be honest with you. I don't understand how this got to this stage, okay? The price you pay to put a franchise tag on a player now for a second straight season, I mean, look at the money Kirk got. It was a big raise from last year. A very big raise because the rules changed a couple of – you guys will probably remember this. There was a time that the Rams franchised Orlando Pace, I want to say anywhere 4 or 5 times in a row.
Right.
Okay?
Yep. Yep.
The Seahawks did it with Walter Jones over and over, and then they finally changed the rules. So for Kirk Cousins, tell me the last time a quarterback, if it's ever happened, and I don't think it has been franchised 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Okay? So the fact that he signed the tender, it was reported that he's not thrilled with Bruce Allen, the whole Scott McCloughan thing, it just sounds like a very unsettling situation in Washington right now. I don't know what's going on, power struggle, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But it's funny, the same people who are upset with, a lot of the same people are upset with the piece I wrote, but again, feel free to read it, They think I did it just to get clicks. If I wanted to get clicks, I'd snap my fingers.
So, Russell, let me get your thoughts on some of the things that Bob and I were talking about at the top of the show.
And the first for me, so jump right in.
Yeah, we got a couple. The New England Patriots, right? It feels like they're doing very New England Patriot-like stuff, like signing guys to big dollar contracts, to bringing in, making some trades, to trading draft picks. So now they don't have a draft pick until early in the 3rd round. The idea of bringing in Stephon Gilmore, but not really showing the love to Malcolm Butler, who, oh, by the way, helped them win a Super Bowl. Your thoughts on what you're seeing the Patriots do?
A little different for them because it's funny. People keep on talking about free agency with them, and at the same time, it's been mostly trades and not free agent pickups. Gilmore was a free agent. Dwayne Allen was a trade. Brandon Cooks was a trade. Coney Ealy was a trade. So it's interesting. I mean, the Brandon Cooks one is fascinating. Okay, and to me, it's a good deal for the Saints. So they got a 1 and a 3 out of it. They gave up a 4, and the Saints need defense in the worst way. And I like the Saints have made very few moves, but I like the moves they've made in free agency right now as well. It's a little different, but you know what? I kind of laugh at the notion that this is New England's already won the Super Bowl. Okay, I mean, It's somewhat reminiscent of 10 years ago when they traded for Randy Moss and made some other trades and so on. So it's interesting what they're doing. But I want to see how it all pans out. I still think Jimmy Garoppolo is very much in play. I don't buy this whole, he's not going to be this. And there is no such thing as not, okay? Maybe in Knots Landing there was a not, but there's no not, okay? If the price is right and it's worth it, you do it. It's a business. And I think the reason New England does what they do and are able to do it is because I think they understand. And listen, Bill Belichick gets, rapped for not being, Mr. Personality, blah, blah, blah. I think that, a little that's exaggerated. But the NFL now, I guess it's the best way to put it. The NFL modern day, in the free agency era, has never been more business-like. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, forget the days of hanging on the player, but it's never been more business-like. And I think Bill Belichick adapted to that very, very quickly. Quicker than I think than some other organizations.
Bob, questions for Russell?
Yeah, Russ, we already mentioned Colin Kaepernick, and this is a fascinating story to me. It's just it's fascinating in the fact that it's just not moving much. I mean, this is a guy here that kind of an enigma, Russ. I mean, when I think about it, he has the record in one game for rushing from a quarterback. If you look at his stats, his TD to interception ratio for his career is good. But this guy, to me, is basically a second-string running back in the league who is making huge money as a quarterback. And this week we have Brian Hoyer saying that he's more familiar with Kyle Shanahan's system and he doesn't want to be a backup. Mm-hmm. You want to go to battle with a guy like Kaepernick? I mean, the guy's 29 years old, Russ, making huge money. Where is this kind of guy going to be in a year or two? What do you see in the future for him?
Well, it's hard to get a read on. I mean, obviously, Colin's work off the field and stuff off the field has kind of taken the spotlight away from the fact that, and here's what we got to remember, he was hurt, okay? It took him a while to get back on the field. There was talk about him losing weight. There was talk about, I think what happened with him this year, and go back and look how he played. Their defense was a joke, okay? An absolute joke. Gave up the most points in the league. Okay, gave up the most yards in the league. I mean, we're doing it the San Francisco 49ers, okay? I didn't know that meant giving up 49 points a game.
It's true.
You go back and look how Kaepernick played. It took him a while to get his arm back, and he started out with his legs. Like, later in the year, he was throwing the ball pretty well. And there's not a lot of talent there. So I don't know where he's headed, but, I mean, listen, the only Bears quarterback that the 49ers haven't signed is Sid Luckman, okay? So,
true.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't rule out Kirk Cousins still going down. I mean, my point about Cousins is I still think a trade is in play. I don't think you can say it's off the board. The most logical place as far as connection is Kyle Shanahan and Pierre Garçon and guys he's played with. Okay? But the rumored bugaboo in that is Daniel Snyder and Kyle Shanahan because of their parting of the ways 3 or 4 years ago. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to get a read on Kaepernick. I don't think he can do any right, to be honest with you.
Correct. And, Russ, I wanted to get your opinion on the Atlanta Falcons in the off season here. I mean, the hangover coming out of that Super Bowl. I'm one of those people who thought that Seattle, even though they're a little personnel than they were a few years ago, I don't know if they ever recovered mentally from that Super Bowl. I'm going to say their Super Bowl win, that Patriots have an asterisk after it, but no matter how you want to look at it, I mean, as tough as these guys are physically, they're still human beings. And knowing what you know about Quinn and the personnel in that city and the new stadium that they're going to be doing, how do you see the future for these guys? Are they going to be able to bounce back easily from this, or is it going to take a lot of work?
Listen, the way things are going in that division, Tampa Bay will be in the Super Bowl this year. It's funny. No, I don't rule that out. Who would have thought Atlanta was going to be in this year? Okay? And we didn't really see Carolina coming as a Super Bowl team. You know, it's funny, since 2002 when the league went to 8 divisions, there's only one division in the entire league that has sent all 4 teams to the Super Bowl. That's the NFC South.
Wow.
NFC West is close with 3.
Yeah.
Okay? I hear people scratching their heads out there. The Rams went in 2001. It wasn't 8 divisions yet. So, here's what I've seen in 2 years with Dan Quinn. He has to learn how to close the deal. Now, I know that's easy to say after you blow a 25-point lead. But go back to his rookie season as a head coach. He was 5-0. Coach of the year for some people. In the playoffs, if the season ended today, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lost 8 of their last 11 games. So 2 years in a row, he has a team that looks like it's in the playoffs and doesn't make it, and then he looks like a team that's about to host the Lombardi Trophy, and they don't make it. And as a head coach, he has to learn from that and pass that on to his players. Like I like the Dontari Poe pickup today, okay? Very solid pickup for them because he isn't limited to playing nose tackle. He may or may not replace Jonathan Babineau. So we'll see. We'll see. But do I expect a 9-game collapse like we saw with the Panthers? My goodness.
Oh, wow.
See, here's the problem with Atlanta. They don't have a good defense to hang their hat on. Okay? What got lost in the Super Bowl, guys, is the fact they gave up 546 yards of offense. I believe that's the second most in the history of the Super Bowl. I think Washington gave up, Denver gave up 602 to Washington. 356 in one quarter, by the way. Can you imagine that? In one quarter.
No.
Okay? It's just astounding to me. You know, and listen, these last 2 years, it just shows you the various ways to win in this league. Denver got 194 total yards and beat Carolina. New England got 546 yards and had to win in overtime.
Russell, one more before we let you go. You know, the Bills have, really turned over their roster. 9 new guys in, 12 guys out, and a couple of, the notable guys in is, fullback Mike Tolbert from the Panthers and the fullback here from the Falcons and Patrick DeMarco. Your thoughts on, what you've seen the Bills do, and, are they trying to win now, or are they going to try to sell their fans, continue to be patient with us, we should be good in a couple of years?
Well, no, I think they'll try to win now, and you see some familiar faces coming over. Sean McDermott, Mike Tolbert. That's a Sean McDermott move if there ever was one. I think what they're probably, this is my impression. As much as they can, I think they're trying to, and listen, we saw it in Philadelphia with Howie Roseman and Chip Kelly, okay? I think they're trying to wash the taste of Rex Ryan out of their mouth. Okay, whether that's fair or unfair. E.J. Manuel signed with the Raiders tonight. Okay, so there's a recent draft choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes, listen, you think about what happened there with their team when Ryan came in, and the year before Jim Schwartz had that defense, which was, oh my gosh, we have 54 sacks, a bunch of takeaways. Pretty impressive. And here comes Rex Ryan, who's a defensive god. And the thing falls apart. And last year they couldn't stop the run. You remember? I know Chris will remember Le'Veon Bell doing what he did. Okay.
Right.
Jay Ajayi got them for 200+ yards twice. All right. I mean, you think about how bad their run defense. They were 29th in run defense. And it got worse as the year wore on. So McDermott's going to come in there. I think we'll see semblance of the 4-3. And here's what I will. One thing I'll throw out. The kid who got hurt last year, Reggie Ragland, the linebacker from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Remember, he missed the whole year. He missed the entire year. So they drafted some quality guys in the first 3 rounds. They just didn't get a lot out of them because of injuries. We'll see what happens with that this year. So, but, I mean, listen, the Bills are the only team not to make the playoffs this century. So
yeah, exactly.
But that's you have to go back to the Music City. They went from losing the Music City Miracle to now it would be a miracle if they made the playoffs.
That's true.
Russell, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing and follow you on social media as well.
Well, stay off my Redskins. No, just kidding. Listen, I'm one-stop shopping, so if you follow me on Twitter, Bax Football Guru, you get everything I write, whether you like it or not. But we have the website Pro Football Guru on Instagram, Pro Football Guru. We actually have team pages now, as you guys know, because you do such a good job plugging them for me. Redskins. Eventually, we'll get them all. Maintaining that many pages is, a little. We have Green Bay, we have New England, we have Pittsburgh, we added Washington for obvious reasons. We have the Cowboys, and then one other thing, which has to do with sports, but not necessarily. But I call it sports positively speaking, and it's just positive stories about things overall. And you guys have been great again, pumping that. I mean, I'm going to throw on I was incredibly honored last night and stunned disbelief. I had served on the board of managers for the YMCA here in Cheshire, Connecticut for 3 years. I stepped away because my schedule's so unpredictable. And my dentist will not be happy with this, but I got some plaque last night.
Yes, you did. I saw the picture. Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And of course, me and my craziness, I posted the picture with my eyes closed, so that was kind of my Venus de Milo look. So
good plaque.
Well, Russell, thank you so much for all of your support and being such a great member of our Hall of Fame. It's always a blast when we get to spend some time with you. It never seems like it's enough time, but thank you for being here again tonight, my friend.
One of these days I'm going to make it down to Atlanta, and we might have to go out for a chicken wing or two.
Absolutely. I would love that. Please make that happen.
Oh, I'm trying. I'm trying. I eventually want to get around and take advantage of the nice thing about our profession now, as far as right that that there's Wi-Fi everywhere. You can write on a plane. You can write in the airport. You can post a story at Dunkin' Donuts. Shameless plug. It's the beauty of what we can do now, and looking forward to hitting the road. I mean, I'll be down in Philadelphia one way or the other for the draft. Always make that trip out to Canton. But what is this? A Super Bowl in Atlanta coming up? When is that?
I think somewhere in the 2020s. I think we got the Super Bowl.
Something like that. 2020.
Yeah.
Who's gonna do the national anthem? Hugh Downs?
Probably so. Maybe
Barbara Walters? I don't know. So.
Russell, thanks again for your time, my friend. We'll catch up with you again real soon. In between now and then, all the best to you and your family.
You got it. You too.
Take care, Russ.
Thanks, Russell. That's the great Russell Baxter. And again, no one knows the game and the stats better than Russell Baxter does. And I'm sincere when I tell you, Russell's great, great football man and a great football mind, but he's a 10 times better person than he is a stats guy. All right, we've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Tony on the other side of this station identification.
This is Christine Lisi, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL stars go to tell their stories with Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line in his regular weekly time slot is our good friend, Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Hey, Tony, how are you this week?
Hi, Tony.
How you doing, Chris? How you doing, Bob? You guys ready for football season to start?
Yeah, are you kidding me? It seems like it's been 100 years since the Super Bowl. Let's go. When's the draft? Why has it got to be 5 weeks from now? Let's go.
I know, right?
So, Tony, as we've been talking, Bob and I have been talking, and we were just talking to Russell Baxter, as well. Your boys are wheeling and dealing up there. They made a trade for a big-time wide receiver in Brandon Cooks, and signed Dante Hightower to a high-dollar free agent contract. It seems like a lot of what they're doing is a little, not like the Patriots that we're used to seeing. So, your thoughts on what you've seen so far from your boys?
I'm loving it right now. That's what they needed. They needed a really good receiver to go along. As long as Gronk can stay healthy, man, and Hightower coming back. I mean, I just see them doing. It could be a repeat again. I'm just being that honest.
And it's interesting, and Russell alluded to this a few minutes ago, but I was reading an article. Barry Chin up there at the Boston Globe wrote an article on Monday saying that he's already booked his flight to Minneapolis for next year's Super Bowl, and the Patriots are going to finish 19-0, which sounds very Tony Collins-esque. So, but when you start to get that way, and people start to tout those things, I would think it starts to make people feel just a little uncomfortable. You're sort of putting the jinx on them before we've even gotten to the draft at this point. Tony, are you happy to hear them boasting, or are you a little nervous that everyone needs to pump the brakes?
But the other thing about that, Chris, though, is what I truly believe in as well. Is when you start believing that you're going to win every game, you start winning every game. And this is the position that the Patriots are in right now. After the last game they played, in their minds right now is that it doesn't matter how bad it may seem, we still have a chance as long as we got Tom Brady, as long as we got Belichick. So it's contagious. And one of the things that Belichick does and the organization does very well is they bring guys in that fit the system, and that's what it's all about, bringing guys in that fit the system. I would always say, why don't they go get a high-time receiver? But a lot of the high-time receivers may not fit the system as Belichick has. So I just think they're doing a fantastic job, man. The organization, and again, I won't be surprised if we go back. You know what? I won't even be surprised if we have an undefeated this season, just like the Miami Dolphins.
You came close once, but. Yeah, we don't need that. Bob, a couple for Tony?
Just to stay on that same topic, Tony, it's amazing to me, all of the success of New England over the past 15, 20 years. When you think about it, Tony, they have probably, when you talk about the word superstar, they haven't had many. So what does that tell you, Tony? It tells me that they always and will always have that same kind of approach to football where give me a bunch of very, very decent players over 3 or 4 superstars, and we'll win the Super Bowl every time. And it's amazing that they still have that going. And I don't see them changing as long as Belichick and Kraft are around. It's kind of the recipe for winning. But if it was that easy, Tony, everyone would do it.
Right. And see, now to me the question is not if they're going to win, because we know they're going to win as long as Belichick and Brady's there. But how long can they make this thing last? That's the thing. How many more years will Brady have? He's in great shape, but football is football, and age is age, and you can't mess with Father Time. And he's not going to be as sharp, maybe 2. I don't know. Brady's just one of those guys. He may go 3 more, maybe 4 more years and play at his best. I mean, that could happen, but you just never know. And just like you said, Rob, I just believe they don't have the superstars. They don't need the superstars. It's all about the system. It's all about guys fitting in that system, man, and that's how they win, and that's how they're going to keep winning. And as long as Kraft is there, and as long as Belichick is there, I don't know how old Belichick is, but it seems like he can coach maybe another good 8 years, don't you think? Can you imagine 8 more years of Belichick? And that could possibly happen. And as long as they're keeping winning, of course, Brady can't go 8 more years. They got G. They got the G man. If he stays there, I think he'll be a great quarterback too.
Tony, I want to ask you, you're 7 years in New England, and whether you stayed around in the off season or not, depending on where you were living, did the team want you to stay close? Did they have anything mandatory? What was your dealings like with the team in the off seasons?
We didn't. And a lot of guys could go back and so I stayed up there because I always liked working out up there. But a lot of guys would go back, and it wasn't really a big thing to stick around. We didn't have some of the things that they're having now, like start working out, and I know their off season they get paid to come back and work out. We didn't have that. We didn't have that when we were playing. We started working out pretty much on our own for a while. I think till when Coach Barry got there. We started a little program in the off season, but before that, my rookie season. After my rookie season, I left. I went back down to North Carolina and just came back when it was time to play ball again. So it wasn't nothing like they have now. More structure and they want guys to stay around and do things in the community as well. But back then we really didn't have that. Especially the time that I was playing. And I think it really matters if that happens, if guys stick around. And it's a lot about the camaraderie with your teammates. You're hanging out with your teammates. It's the camaraderie. That's one of the things I tell guys all the time. The NFL was fantastic. I loved the game. The money was great. I had a fantastic time. But the thing I missed the most is the camaraderie with the guys. That's something that you can never really replace. Even that trip we went to the Super Bowl, even though we didn't win, that trip was a trip that I will never forget, and a lot of guys would never forget. It was the first time a Patriot team had gone on to the Super Bowl, and so it's the camaraderie with the guys is really, really just fantastic. It's something that you can. You really can't describe it. You just have to be a part of that, and being a part of a team, and that you can really understand what I'm talking about. But it's something that I miss the most.
Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners about the great things you're doing helping kids go off to college.
TonyCollinsFoundation.com and TonyCollinsSpeaks.com. Go to those two websites. We're giving out scholarships to high school students going off to school, $1,500. I also have the book at the website. Purchase a book. Every book that we sell helps a kid go off to college.
That's great stuff. Tony, thanks again for your time this week. We look forward to catching up with you again next week, my friend, in between now and then. All the best to you and your family.
You guys have a great one.
Be well, Tony.
Take care, Tony. That's former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, and always a great time catching up with Tony. All right, we've got our next guest, BC Lions wide receiver Marco Iannuzzi, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Marco on the other side of this station identification.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
All right, now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Marco Iannuzzi. Let me give you some background on Marco. He is from Calgary, Alberta. In high school, he led his school to back-to-back provincial titles. They went undefeated during his entire high school career, going 29-0. In 2004, they were ranked the number one team in Canada. He went to play college here in the States at Harvard, and then he also attended MIT. Played his college ball at Harvard, where he was, he still is their all-time leader in kickoff return average yards, which was helped by a 95-yard kick return for a touchdown in against Brown in 2010. That year, he averaged 34.5 yards per return, which is set their single-season average record as well. He was a first-round draft pick, the 6th overall selection by the BC Lions in 2011, and I'm sure it was no coincidence that the Lions would go on to win the Grey Cup that season. Marco is also one of the most philanthropic guys you'll find anywhere on the planet. He is doing wonderful things for so many organizations. To name just a couple, he works, for MS, for autism, for fighting against homophobia, environmental issues he's involved with, and just so much more. He does work for the BC Lions Children's Hospital and the Children's Hospice there in Vancouver. He was this year's recipient of the Tom Pate Memorial Award, which is given annually to the player who displays outstanding sportsmanship and someone who has made significant contributions to his team, his community, and the CFLPA as well. And if all that wasn't enough, he won the title of Canada's Smartest Person on a TV show of that same name up there in Canada as well, and we are honored that Marco is back with us again here tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Marco, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, fellas, and that was quite the introduction. I thank you for that.
And Marco, I think this is the first time you're not on a team bus when we're trying to talk with you, so we have a little less background noise, and we appreciate the fact that that you've done that for us in the past. But it's a little odd not having you on the bus when we're having this conversation.
I was thinking about that today. This is going to be the easiest conversation that we'll have, but then we are in a hotel room now, and I do have my 3 kids running around right now, and they're just beating each other up. So you still might hear a little bit of noise, but it won't be 350-pound linemen.
Always a challenge.
Right. So, Marco, heavy is the crown of the man who wears the title. What's it been like the last couple of years carrying around, Canada's Smartest Person title?
That was a great show. It was a lot of fun. I found out it actually worked out well that they were filming it, and they filmed it around a football schedule because they filmed it during season. So we had a bye week. So showed up in Toronto, and we did a great little couple days of the competition, and it was neat. It was really cool to be get that title. I don't know. My wife will tell you that it's the most incorrect title in all of the nation, but I guess I have it and stick with it, even if she doesn't believe it.
So, Marco, I saw that you recently signed a new 2-year contract, with the Lions. Was that weighing on you prior to getting it done, or were you always confident that you were going to be a BC Lion again next season?
Well, I always wanted to be a BC Lion. It was a very difficult negotiation process. I represent myself. I know you guys what you'll have to say about that, but I decided to represent myself a few contracts ago, and so wearing both hats as the negotiator and the player, it's kind of tough. But I went in December when our season ended. In November, I went in and had our first meeting, and it didn't go well. And I thought that I'd be really headed to free agency in February. And as the months went on, we had some other conversations. They also didn't go well. And it was a really stressful time for me and my family. Like I said, we have 3 kids. So we were thinking about, are we going to end up in Alberta? Are we going to end up across the whole country? Who knows where we might be? And the kids are all sort of based in school now. So that was the biggest thing, just family-wise. I always wanted to become a Lion. There was no question about that. It was just a matter of making the dollars and cents work with the salary cap and everything like that. And, I was never trying to be a greedy guy. I just was trying to get what was fair and my fair market value. And by the end of it, our free agency was February 14th at 9 a.m., and I signed my deal at 8:38 a.m., so literally right to the wire. It was quite a stressful time in our household.
And looking back over your stats, Marco, you had career highs last season in receiving yards, punt returns, return yardage last season. Talk about, now it looks like you've got an increased role there with the Lions. Talk about what that was like for you last season.
Yeah, things worked out my way last year. We have what happened is we've got a different quarterback now, and he's able to throw different parts of the field. So as some of your listeners might not know, the Canadian field is 12 yards wider than the American field. So if you're the wide side receiver, it's quite a distance. Even if you're just throwing a 10-yard out, it ends up being nearly a 45-yard throw for the quarterback, and that thing's hanging in the air for a while. So we have had a new quarterback this past year, a young gunslinger, and he's got the ability to throw the deep ball on the wide side of the field, which could eventually be, a 70-yard throw if you're throwing a go route. And by him being able to do that, it's opened up other routes for me, and it was able to give me a more of a shot to be involved in the offense, whereas before the position that I was playing, it was just limited because, there's only so much you can do when you're that far from the quarterback.
Bob, questions for Marco?
It's always a pleasure speaking with you, Marco. As I told you the last time, I grew up in the New Haven area, and I got to see you play twice at the Yale Bowl, and I'm sure you'll never forget those experiences. And I remember you returning kicks, and of course, I think I relayed to you that 34.5-yard average in 2010. That's something that nobody, I don't think, will ever rival in the Ivy League, if anywhere else. I mean, it's just an incredible record. But as far as that kind of mentality to run back kicks, Marco, we always talk to guys even at the NFL level who say it's not just the fastest guy, it's not the guy possibly with the best moves, but what makes that mentality of a kick returner different than other people?
I think you have to be fearless, and I just recently watched, I think it was a Walter Payton special, and I hadn't seen some Walter Payton clips since really a while, but I remember as a kid, the Walter Payton clips were, instead of going out of bounds, he would sort of lay his head down and sort of hit the guy and go for that extra 2 yards, and I remember talking to coaches or friends or my dad at the time and saying, like, why is he doing that? And we just appreciated so much that he was really fearless, and that's how he was able to play the game. So putting that into a kick returner's mind, what do you want to do when you have 11 or 12 guys running at you? You don't want to run at them, but in kick returner's mind, you have to run straight at them, and I think that's the only way you catch them off guard. So I think you got to put fear in the back pocket. Sometimes you're going to get hit and you're going to take some big smacks, but you can't play like that at all. I think the most difficult thing for someone to do is to run full speed at another human being and tackle them. So if I run half speed, it gives them an opportunity. If I run full speed and they're running full speed, then the ball's in my court. So it's definitely a mental state you got to get into. And I know that my mother still, when she watches the game, she cringes. My wife cringes every time you're catching a return because, anything could happen. But the same token that anything bad could happen as far as getting the lick, anything could happen as far as you could break it and really change the game. And there's nothing like breaking through the first wave, breaking through the second wave, and it's just you and 40 yards of field. And you hear that roar of the stadium behind you. That thing gets vibrating in your whole body. It's a pretty neat feeling.
Marco, when Chris was reading your biography, I was almost snickering because it's just he only touched the surface of how busy a man you are. I mean, I could relate to some degree, but it's amazing the kind of schedule you lead. But then I thought back to those Ivy League years, and the responsibility and pressure put on a student athlete pretty much at any school, but especially at the Ivy League. And I'll probably answer my own question, but you can add to it. It has to have helped you to play at an Ivy League institution as far as budgeting your time and the discipline that you need these days.
Yeah, I always say when those 4 years that we were in Cambridge, I didn't really have a day or a night. I would kind of work for 10 hours, and then I would sleep for 2 hours wherever I was, and then I'd work for 10 hours and sleep for 2 hours. So sometimes those sleeps would end up in the football locker room. Sometimes they'd be in a library. The odd time I'd be able to get to my house and get to my own bed. But it was definitely a lot of work. And whenever I get out here, and now I run a wealth management practice. I'm playing pro ball. I sit on a number of boards, and we have our family, three children, and I do a couple startups as well on the side. And whenever things get tough, I just sort of look at it and go, hold on a second. At one point in time, I was only sleeping 2 hours every 10 hours. So today I slept for 5 hours. Well, heck, it was 5 hours in a row, and it was 1 hour more than I slept for in previous life. So whenever things get hard, I just really look back at those 4 years because they really challenged me. And at that time in my life, I guess I had an option, but in my mind, I had no option of I gotta succeed here in school. I gotta succeed here in football. I gotta succeed here for so many reasons. All the people looking up to me, all the people counting on me that I just found a way. And it was easy to find a way then. So fast forward now into real life, I call it, with I guess more responsibilities and less structure that a university would provide you with. Anytime times get tough, I just really look at it and I just say, you know what, I've done it before when the pressure was hot, and if it's hot now, I don't think it's ever been as hot as it was back then. So whatever needs to be done, I'll do it. I'll take care of it and move on to the next thing.
Marco, you guys finished 12-6 last season. Came up a little short against Calgary in the division finals. What do you think you guys need? What needs to happen, so that when you get to this next coming season, pardon me, you're able to get over the hurdle and play for another Grey Cup?
We were, I remember the first day of training camp, I get this microphone stuffed in my face after the first practice, and the media guy says, you guys are projected last place this year. How do you feel about it? And I was like, well, I didn't know why we were projected last place. I said, okay, I guess there was a lot of uncertainty with our young quarterback and our coach that had come back from, he moved up into management and then he came back to be our head coach. So I guess there was some uncertainty in a lot of people's eyes, but we were ranked last place. And by the end of the season, before the playoffs, we were ranked second place. And and then they're sticking the mics in your mouth and in your face and they're saying, hey, you guys are doing so great. And it's the same guy. And he's just praising you for everything great that you've done when he was just, pooping on you way back when. Right. So I think that what am I going to say right now? I think that we just got to keep doing what we're doing. We came up short in a couple of games and obviously in the playoff game, which is when it counts. And, but we gave great efforts and we had a young team. And we still showed so much character, which is something you were thinking, or most people thought that we wouldn't have, is to show character and resilience. When the young guys, they get put in situations they haven't been in, how do they respond? And you know what, starting with our young quarterback, I mean, I look at the guy and I sometimes forget he was only, I think he was 24 years old last year. Like he's just, and you think he just turned 24 years old. He's 23. Like he's just a little baby. And to think that this guy is doing the things he's doing, leading us, and he doesn't even really know how to lead as a pro football player, but he had to figure it out really quick. So starting with him, and our secondary as well, we had 4 major injuries in our secondary, big Achilles, knee issues. And so these other young guys stood up and we had an amazing secondary. So you put those things together, where guys who you weren't expecting to step up have been stepping up. That's how you put together a championship team. And now these guys are proven in my mind. And even if the media says they aren't, they are in my mind. And I just think that we really got to just be ourselves and keep doing what we're doing, because the only reason we came up short this last season was not from preparation. It just came down to the dogfight of the battle. And some battles you win, some battles you lose, but we were well prepared. We had great skill levels, great talent on the team. We had all-star players in all the positions needed. We really had no lacking part. We just need to be champions on that given day, and that just comes from the heart of that day.
Marco, one more before we let you go, and as we talked about in your intro, and Bob alluded to a moment ago, you do so many good things. You're involved with so many charities and raising money. Talk about some of the organizations you're involved with and how people can get involved with you. Yeah, I mean, I think that the most important thing is maybe you don't even necessarily have to be involved with me and my charities. What I do is, and I help so many different charities, probably it's over 50 events a year that I do, and I'm a charity auctioneer. But I really just look when I'm affected or impacted by someone, and that's when I want to help. So I met this family. Their son has autism, and I just spent like a half a day with them, and I just realized like the difficulties of just everyday life, the things that you take for granted. There's just so many things that they have so many challenges with, and I just said, man, how can I help? And that's when I started helping out with Ernie Els for Autism. So I helped bring Ernie Els for Autism golf tournaments up here to Canada. You guys have 20 down in the States. We opened up over the past 5 years. We've opened up 6 of them across Canada. So I've been chairman of that. I help out with overall wellness. So that's food banks. We also help out with giving free tax advice, free legal advice, free counseling, basically the holistic approach of helping a human who needs help. And when you're in your toughest times, whether you're in an abusive relationship or you can't put a roof over your head, you can't put food in your belly, that's when you need help. And just when I see these people that they needed a hand for a little bit of their life, and we help them out through Sources BC, where I sit on the board of that charity, it just the greatest feeling in the world is helping someone else. I don't know if you've ever given a gift to someone, it feels a lot better than receiving a gift. If you've ever, the old school thing of, or the adage of where you say you help a little old lady across the street. Have you ever actually helped a lady across the street? It's an amazing feeling. I mean,
I think just giving whatever is affecting you, whatever you see around you, it can be something as simple as instead of walking down the street with a mean mug on, just smiling at people as you walk by. I mean, it's so easy to have an impact in this world. All you have to do is just find someone that needs a hand and extend a hand to them, because at some point we all really do need a hand, and it's a really nice feeling when you feel that maybe you've lost hope and someone reaches out to you and gives you a little bit of hope. I'm just trying to give as much hope as I can every day.
That's awesome. You do such a great job of that, Marco. Thank you so much for taking time out of your night and your time with your boys there in the hotel to come back and be a part of the show. We always have such a great time when you join us, Marco. We hope you'll come back and do it again real soon.
Of course, feel free to follow me on social feeds. Easiest way to find me is just Google Marco BC Lions, and you'll find me.
Yeah, tell everyone how they can find you on Twitter. You're a good follow.
Yeah, Iannuzzi Marco, IANNUZZI-MARCO, and it's Iannuzzi Marco on all my feeds, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. But like I said, if you can't find me because my last name's a little crooked, just Google Marco BC Lions and you'll find me.
Great stuff. Thank you, Marco. All the best to you and your family, my friend. We look forward to the next time we get to spend some time with you.
Thanks for having me, and I love hearing you guys' show. You guys got an all-star lineup, and I'm humbled that you'd include me in it, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you, Marco. Take care, my friend. We'll catch up soon.
Cheers.
That is BC Lions wide receiver Marco Iannuzzi, and Bob. You want to talk about it. A talented guy, B, a smart guy, and a guy that goes out and does such great things over and over again. In the community, it doesn't come any better than Marco Iannuzzi.
There's not much to say, Chris. Anyone out there, just Google his biography. It'll blow your mind how this guy can do what he does in a 24-hour day, and it all goes back to his days at Harvard. I remember him well, Chris, watching him and even talking to him back then. I mean, the guy was destined for great things, but my goodness, every time we have a spotlight on the positive, man, this guy should be at the forefront. I mean, he's just, what he does. And what he said at the end was the most incredible thing. It's all about helping others. This guy gets it. Not only is he a great athlete, Chris, but my goodness, when he's going to have an impact as much as for the rest of his life. This guy is going to have an impact every day he wakes up. And my goodness, what a legacy to leave, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, it doesn't get better than that. All right, we've got our next guest, Terry Glenn, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Terry on the other side of this station identification.
Hello, everybody. Van Earl right here, reminding you that you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with the dynamic duo of Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari, right here on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back with us on the Kaiven Foods guest line is former Patriots, Packers, and Cowboys wide receiver Terry Glenn. Let me give you some more background on Terry. He's from Columbus, Ohio, played his college ball at Ohio State, where he was a consensus first-team All-American and the Fred Biletnikoff Award winner as the nation's top college wide receiver in 1995. He was a first-round draft pick, the 7th overall selection by the New England Patriots in 1996, and he played in the league from 96 to 2007, like I said, for the Patriots, Packers, and Cowboys. He was named the AFC Rookie of the Year in 96, selected to the Pro Bowl in 99, and was a part of the Patriots' Super Bowl championship team back in 2001, and he was named to the Patriots All-1990s team. Finished his career with 593 receptions for a little over 8,800 yards and 44 touchdowns. Terry also spent some time as the offensive coordinator for the Texas Revolution in the Indoor League. And for anyone who's ever heard Terry on the radio or doing any sort of broadcasting, he's got a great future behind the mic whenever he's ready for it, wherever he wants it. And we're excited that he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Terry, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back, Terry.
Hey, Chris and Bob, what's up, buddies?
How have you been, Terry? It's been a little while. Catch us up. What's going on?
I've been pretty good, man. First, I want to say I think Marco, I want to be like, I know it's Iannuzzi, but I want to be like, for the things that he do for charity and the things that he do for humanity. I mean, that guy sounded like a really, really upstanding type of guy, and I really want to follow him. So big ups to Marco. But as far as for me,
there you go.
I kind of put the little broadcasting thing down. I'm not behind the mic anymore. I really found my calling in life, my passion, and that is really helping foster kids. And I formed a foundation called 83 Kids Foundation, and it basically targets foster kids and helping them out in the things that they need in life. Being a former foster kid myself.
Awesome.
And it's interesting, Terry. As I was, kind of looking over some of the more recent things that you've been involved with. Boy, you really are doing some great things out there with your foundation. Again, 83 kids. Talk about a little more in detail about the things that you're doing, trying to help them.
Well, basically, I try to use my platform of playing football. Some of the things that you mentioned, it's been so long, I almost forgot about any of those accolades. Right now, helping foster kids is really, really a passion of mine. So I try to use this platform to raise money for other organizations in the local areas, especially in DFW and Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. We give things like school supplies, help kids go to camps, clothes, shoes, you name it, anything I can do for kids. And it's not just foster kids. It's really becoming a foundation for kids in need.
Terry, I want to kind of go back to your time at Ohio State, really, or just get your thoughts on your alma mater. As I looked over, the last several years, your boys, they lost 6 games in 5 years under Urban Meyer. Last season, 11-2, and right there in the college playoff mix. They only had 1 senior starter last year, 16 new starters on the team, 43 true or redshirt freshmen on the roster. Give us your thought. What are your expectations next season for the Buckeyes?
Well, Urban Meyer's a great coach, and he's up there with one of the best organizations that you can have, or college situations you could be a part of, and he has really taken our program to another level. I expect him to really each and every year, like he was when he won it in 2014, something like that. But he's just an outstanding coach. He has great talent, and he seems to keep them young. And I predict that they'll be back there again. I know that Clemson game was a tough one to watch. It really was. But Clemson had a very good football team, as you can tell, by going on and winning this championship. So I think Urban is going to do a really good job this year and in the years to come. That's what I look forward to.
Terry, when you look at what the Patriots have achieved, they're continually in the AFC Championship game or in the Super Bowl. Next season they'll be trying to win a third Super Bowl in 4 years, just like they did back in 2001 to 2004. Does it amaze you to knowing how hard it is to get to 1 Super Bowl, right? And to get keep coming back and year after year to find themselves in that same position. Is that amazing to you, or since you were around the team and you got to work under Belichick early on in his tenure with New England, is it really like Tony Collins? We were talking to Tony earlier tonight. Something you just expect that now? You expect that that's where they're going to be now?
Well, at first it was pretty amazing, and I didn't expect it. But now that I see what really has transpired and knowing Belichick and knowing the kind of competitor Brady is and the kind of off-season moves that they make, I would say that I would expect them to be up there each and every year, just like next year. I expect them to be there again. I do expect my Cowboys to be there as well, AFC, NFC. I'm an AFC Patriot. I'm an NFC Cowboy. So I expect them 2 teams to be there. But the things that Belichick and Brady are able to do, it's just genius. I mean, he's a mastermind of how he can control the locker room. And I was watching some behind the scenes of the AFC Championship this past year because I went to that game, actually. And I saw some locker room footage of just the way he approached the guys after the game. They won the game to beat Pittsburgh, and it was like, guys, good game. We got another one coming up. Let's get ready. I mean, some teams going there after the AFC Championship, I know what I did when we was playing, and we felt like we won that Super Bowl right then and there. But those guys, it was like nothing. Everybody was just quiet and getting ready for the next game. And I think that approach that he has that franchise just where he wants it, and they have something that is very, very special, especially until Brady leaves.
Bob, questions for Terry?
Terry, it's great to speak with you again. And I want to take you back to Ohio State once again. And we know you played high school ball in Ohio, Terry, which is a hotbed of better football. Your high school had a few NFL guys go on to the league and everything. But I'm just wanted to get your memories, Terry, of that first game in front of a college crowd, the difference between playing in front of maybe a few thousand as opposed to 70 or 80,000. Was that overwhelming? Take me back, and if you have any memory of it.
It was very overwhelming, especially for me. When I was younger, I was able to vendor Coke at the Ohio State Stadium. So I was probably about 11 years old, 12, 13. I was up in the stadium yelling, Coke, yeah? And I remember just being in awe of all the people that were in that stadium watching a football game. I never, ever thought in my dreams that I would be able to make it to a level like that. And like you said, being out there in front of those guys, like maybe a couple hundred people in high school, to going to 100,000 in my own backyard. I think the old adage is when you're out there, you're really playing for your teammates, you're playing for yourself, and you kind of got to forget about the crowd. I know when I first got out there, it's overwhelming. Each and every game was overwhelming because I'm more of a shy type person. So even when I came out in the locker room, I had trouble. Not trouble, but I had a little fear of going out and warming up because I didn't really want people looking at me and being able to see me. That's why one of the reasons why I couldn't play basketball, because I was so close to the fans. I was a little embarrassed a little bit and shy. But being out there, way out there in the football field with your helmet on, you can kind of hide a little bit. So I was able to get away with it. But I tell you, playing in front of those fans at Ohio State and then going on to the NFL, as long as you can keep it in perspective that you're playing for your teammates and you're really playing for yourself and your family, I think it all kind of goes away, especially after that first hit.
And speaking of new beginnings, Terry, that rookie year in New England, I mean, being a first-round draft pick, tell me if you felt a lot of pressure in that first camp, and who are some of the guys on that team at the very beginning who kind of eased your existence and helped you out along the way?
Well, I would say my back was against the wall. If you can remember, Bill Parcells wasn't too happy of drafting a wide receiver with that first pick that year. Mm-hmm. So the organization, Bob Kraft and Bobby Greer, kind of went over his head a little bit, and then he had a little reef there when Bill Parcells basically moved on to another team. But Sean Jefferson, he was an older receiver there that came from San Diego. He was a guy that helped me in my transition from college to the pros. But I tell you, when I got drafted out of college, it was the happiest day of my life. The simple fact that I felt like the Patriots chose me. It was one of the first times in my life, being a former foster kid, that I felt chosen, like somebody wanted me. And I remember showing up to the stadium with my Drew Bledsoe jersey on, ready to run routes. I'm telling you, when I got off the airplane, I had my Drew Bledsoe jersey on. I didn't even want to sit in the front seat because we had all the draftees fly in on the same day. And I remember I flew in last. I don't know how they did that, but I flew in last. And all the draft picks, Lawyer Malloy, Teddy Bruschi, great guys, that Hall of Famers in my book, they were in the back seat, and we had a front seat waiting for me. And I was in awe that whole moment, that whole day. And just being a Patriot and being drafted, it was something that was very, very dear to my heart. And, when I went out there, I think I just wanted to play football. I didn't feel the pressure that maybe some other people would feel because I knew I had something that a lot of players didn't have. I knew I could run pretty fast. I knew I could stop. I knew I was tough, and I knew I could catch. So putting all those things together, it was just a matter of time before I got up there on the football field and proved my worth. And me just being humble and happy to be there, I think that was my major attribute.
And Terry, I want to expand on something that you said, the value that you felt in being chosen, sort of the first time that, you were chosen by somebody. What did that mean to you?
Well, when I was younger, I had a lot of issues with family. I bounced around from home to home, school to school. And you can read this on my website. It's 83kids.com. It was very tough for me. I really was living with people that I didn't really feel wanted me there. Maybe they felt obligated to have me there, or maybe it was for financial reasons or what have you not. I just felt like I was on borrowed time my whole life, so to speak. Not my whole life now, but growing up as a child. And then all of a sudden going to Ohio State once again. I was recruited a little bit because we had a big-time recruiting player named Jason Gwynn that I went to high school with. He was being recruited by The Ohio State University. So they kind of saw me on the side when they were recruiting him. But I didn't get a scholarship when I first came out. I walked on at Ohio State. So once again, I was kind of fighting my way through. I wasn't really chosen. I was just landed on the team. And then I was able to earn a scholarship the next year. And then, lo and behold, my junior season, I kind of exploded. And that's when that draft day. I didn't even go to New York because I was afraid I wasn't even going to get drafted that first day. I knew I had a great season. I heard all the press. Part of me felt like I should be drafted on the first day, even though I won the Biletnikoff and things like that and felt like I was the best receiver in the draft. I didn't know how it was going to play out. So I decided to stay home that day with a couple of my college buddies. And just to hear my name spoken over TV, and it was the New England Patriots select wide receiver Terry Glenn out of Ohio State University. That was the greatest day. I remember like it was yesterday. I remember jumping out the ceiling and running downstairs and just hugging all my buddies, and that's the moment I felt that, they chose me. So I was indebted to them, and that's why when I showed up to the Patriots, I was all ears. I was ready to go.
So when you look back over your career, and like you spent the early part of your career in New England, the latter part of your career in Dallas, you had that 1 year in Green Bay. Are you a Patriot? Are you a Cowboy? What do you think when you think of yourself? What do you think of yourself as?
An NFL wide receiver, a guy that played in the
Neither
NFL.
team?
That's what I look at myself as. All of them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say neither. I'm gonna say all. Obviously, I didn't only spend 1 year in Green Bay, but it was a great, great time. People in Wisconsin, I would say, out of all the places I lived, those people in Green Bay, just that 1 year I spent, were some of the nicest people in the country to me. And I would have thought it would have been the opposite. But those people there really welcomed me. It was great. They're fun. They're great fans. They love their team. If you've been to Green Bay, it's really the stadium and then a town built around it. So it was all about football. So every day or every Sunday we would go travel to the game. The city was empty. I mean, everybody was at the game, and they loved their Packers. And so it was fun. But, I'm a Patriot first, just like I said on my website. I'm a Patriot first. That's like my mother, but Dallas is like my father. And I use those terms for the simple fact that, I kind of grew up without a mother and a father, but if I did, that's what it would be like.
Terry, one more before we let you go, and there are some special one-on-one matchups that we get to watch now in the NFL between wide receivers and defensive backs. Odell Beckham versus Josh Norman, comes to mind, for instance. Were there defensive backs that you enjoyed going one-on-one with, to kind of see who was going to be the better player on each play?
One thing I really want to say, and I always say this every time I'm watching football games, and I really never had a chance to say it publicly, but they're not really playing football anymore. And I really believe that these wide receivers and these DBs and their stats, they should have an asterisk by there. It's almost like baseball. I mean, you got steroid era and this and that, which is asterisks and all this different stuff. I think that these wide receivers that's catching these balls nowadays, they're not being contested at all. I remember when we was out there playing, even the guys before me, I can't even speak for them because they really had it rough. But even the time that I played, you can get away with so much. Now you can't even blow on a guy without a ref throwing a flag. And they let these guys catch the ball across the middle because they're scared to hit them. So these guys catching balls for 80, 90, almost 100 yards a game, and it's not contested. They're running slants. They don't have anything to worry about, a big safety coming down and knocking their head off. Back when I was playing, you had to not only catch the ball and can run, but you had to be tough. And you had to have your head on a swivel. So for these guys to go out there and say these guys are the greatest, now don't get me wrong, Beckham, he's a great wide receiver. He can catch pretty good. But he's dropped more balls in one game than I dropped in a whole season. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's nothing. You guys get up, I dropped the ball so well, let's go to the next play. No. I remember dropping a ball, and it was like life and death. So the game today, it's very watered down. It's almost hard to watch. I only watch teams that I really played for, and really right now I only watch the Dallas Cowboys because I live here. And it's almost getting like basketball to me. I watch it when they get to the playoffs and then the Super Bowl. But to me now it's very watered down. It's not really even fair for the guys that really went out there and played and caught real footballs. I mean, it's a travesty. So I don't know. I really don't have too much to say about that. The guys are decent to me. They can catch with one hand. They got gloves now that can stick to anything. And I had some of the biggest hands out there. And don't get me wrong, I see these guys catching the balls with one hand. It looks all sweet and it's fun, but it's not football anymore. So that's what I got to say about that. I'm glad you gave me this platform to just speak that little piece right there, because it's been on my mind for a while now. It's been on my mind. And they should really have an asterisk for all these guys. I mean, to compare numbers, I mean, look at numbers, for example. Don't get me wrong. Some of the things you do off the field definitely can affect you getting in the Hall of Fame. But T.O. is a great football player. He'll be there eventually. There's enough people behind him that thinks he should be there, so he will be there because his numbers are there. But it's all a numbers game, especially at the position I played. So the guys coming out now or coming up, the Beckhams and all these other guys, they're going to reach 10,000 yards in 6 seasons. And look at it. Nobody can touch them anymore. I mean, they're averaging 1,600 yards a season and missing 3 games. So to me, it's very watered down. I think it should be a different era where it should be an asterisk, whereas post, you can't touch the receiver anymore era. I think that's what it should be like. So that's just my opinion.
Terry, before we let you go, let our listeners know how they can follow you, whether it's online, your 83kids.com, or on social media, and stay up to date with all the great things you're doing.
Well, you can follow me on Facebook at just Terry Glenn, or you can follow my Facebook page, which is 83 Kids Foundation. My website, which I'm very proud of, is 83kids.com. You can find out everything you need to know about me and what I'm doing with the Foundation for Foster Kids. Or on, I really don't use Instagram that much, but I'm starting to. It's at 8Tre, which is ATETRE, kind of short for 83. Twitter at Terry_Glenn, and my LinkedIn is Terry Glenn.
Well, Terry, it's been great having you back on the show. We've certainly missed you. We hope that the next time isn't so far apart before we get to have you come back on the show, because you're outstanding.
I hope not, man, and I really, really thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Terry,
too,
thanks
Bob.
very much again, and all the best to you, and we look forward to hopefully, like I say, catching up with you again real soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. You guys, take care.
Have a
all right,
great
you
night.
too, Terry. That is the former Patriots, Packers, and Cowboys wide receiver Terry Glenn. And, Bob, it just, it touches me, the great stuff that he's doing for kids and kids in foster homes and that sort of thing. And when he talks about, finally, feeling chosen, when the Patriots selected him, that's really something. And, he was a great wide receiver, great player, no doubt. But the great things that he's doing, for kids, is even greater.
That's exactly right, Chris. There's a role model right there, a guy who bounced around, like he said, from family to family, felt unwanted, and somehow found it in himself to make it to the NFL, and arguably had his best year as a pro in his rookie year, Chris. It's an amazing career when you look at it. And I'm just so glad that he's found his niche, probably since the last time we spoke. It's so refreshing to hear him. You could hear the excitement in his voice. And, again, not only a great player, but now doing some great things all around him.
Yeah, I've missed having Terry on the show. We were fortunate, to get Terry, and he joined us for a whole season, kind of going through our 5-star picks of the week, and it was great having him as part of the show for the year that we had him, and certainly missed having him on the show, and hopefully we get Terry back again real soon. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before we get to our next guest, Gay Culverhouse, I want to give a shout-out to our good friend Renee Schell over at Career Engagement Institute. Folks, if you're upside down in your career, and what do we mean by that? Well, you're ready to move on, right? Well, go to careerengagement.institute to see how Renee can help you. You've heard some of our guests here on TNT, like TNT Hall of Famer Toy Cook singing Renee's praises. And if you work with Renee for 2 minutes, you're going to understand exactly why Toy did that and why we do that every single week here on the show. When you're ready to make a job move, you want to work with someone that you can trust and who actually has your best interests at heart. And you know how rare it is to find someone who fits that description. Well, no one does it better than Renee Schell does. She's a wonderful person, the kind of person you want to work with and have working for you. She's doing some great things from some of our guests who have been in transition from being pro athletes and are now getting into the job market. Folks, I'm telling you, Renee is just the very best. There isn't a better way to describe her than that. If you're an athlete or anyone in the job market, do yourself a favor and reach out to Renee. You're going to be so very glad that you did. Go to careerengagement.institute online and give her a follow on Twitter @IntegratedPlay. All right, now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Gay Culverhouse. Let me give you some more background on Gay. She is the former president of Notre Dame and the Tampa Bay Bucs. She is the daughter of former Bucs owner Hugh Culverhouse. She is also the founder of the Gay Culverhouse Players Outreach Program, which assists retired NFL players, or assists them with access to the benefits that they are entitled to from the NFL. She is also the author of the book Throwaway Players, The Concussion Crisis from Pee Wee Football to the NFL. And beyond all of that, she shares the same birthday as my mother, February 5th. So I'm excited, and we're excited to have her as part of the show tonight. Hey, Gay, Chris, and Bob, thanks for joining us tonight.
Welcome.
Hi. Your mom must be an outstanding woman.
And in fact, she is. Thank you very much for saying that.
Oh.
So, Gay, I want to start our time with you tonight by talking about your father, Hugh Culverhouse. He was a tax lawyer, built his fortune, through real estate. Talk about, how he turned, a failed attempt at buying the Rams into being, and turning it into a positive thing by starting the Bucs as an expansion franchise down there in Tampa.
Well, that's a real loaded question, as I'm sure you know. My father had a handshake agreement on a Friday afternoon with Pete Rozelle to buy the Rams out of Dan Reeves' estate. Come Monday, the newspapers announced that Irsay had bought the Rams. My father was devastated, and he brought a lawsuit against the NFL for breach of contract. What had happened was that Carol Rosenblum, who owned the Baltimore Colts, wanted the Rams, which were located in L.A., because he lived in L.A. And so he structured the deal for Irsay to buy the Rams, and then they switched. So Irsay ended up with the Baltimore Colts, and Carol Rosenblum ended up with the LA Rams, and my father ended up with nothing. The handshake agreement disappeared. The out-of-court settlement was undisclosed, but what it was, in fact, was my father would be awarded the first expansion team when that occurred. Several years later, they brought two teams into the league, Tampa and Seattle. The first team that was awarded was Seattle. My father was called and told, and my father lives in Florida. My father was called by the NFL and told that the first NFL expansion team was awarded to Seattle, and he could have that team per their agreement. My father called members of the family, and none of us were willing to move to Seattle. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were awarded to a contractor in Washington, D.C., because the NFL was looking at antitrust problems at that point, and this contractor had a number of contacts, and the NFL hoped that he would lobby on their behalf in Washington, and as the reward, they gave him the second expansion team, which was Tampa Bay, although he lived in D.C. After 3 weeks, he could not get together to purchase the team, which was $16 million. My father had been ready with money at hand since the beginning of the Ram debacle. So they turned to my father after 4 weeks and said, "Would you like to purchase the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? It's now become available." And that's the story.
Wow. So that all happens. How is he not sour over the NFL, over the first?
He was. Of course he was. Of course he was upset. Wouldn't you be? I mean, of course you would.
Yeah,
be upset.
absolutely. I don't know how you'd want to still be a part of it years later after they did him wrong to begin with.
Well, let's look at it this way. My father was a very bright man. He made a lot of money. He made the money by thinking with his brain and not his heart. When he went into the Rams, he liked the concept of living in California. It was similar to Florida. And he was in love with the idea of football and the NFL. He was leading with his heart. Afterwards, he started thinking about football with his brain and not his emotions. And he looked at it as a way to make money off the NFL. And he was no longer in love with football or the idea of the NFL. He started looking at it as purely a business proposition. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when he died and sold the team, which he had purchased for $16 million, it was well over $300 million. So it was a pretty good investment.
Indeed. And Gay, in the last year, we've seen the Rooney Rule get expanded to women, and the leagues starting to give more women interviews for league executive positions. But when you were president of the Bucs back in the early 90s, it was a time when there were no women in those types of positions or even thought of for those kind of roles.
Well, there
what
were
was that like
women.
for you?
I mean, there were women, in honesty, but they were all daughters or relatives. Ralph Wilson's daughter was a scout. Susan was a scout. Leonard Tost had a female as his treasurer, unrelated, an attorney, Mary something. Janet Robbie was working very closely with her dad in the team. And so, no, there weren't a lot of women, but there aren't a lot of women now. And even though they're going to give interviews, that doesn't mean there are going to be a lot of hires. Just like there are a lot of interviews for black front office members, but there aren't very many hires. When you look at it, it's really a family business. It's one of those John Mara and Sons relatives. I mean, Shad Khan's son, Jerry Jones' son, Bob Kraft's son, the Tisch sons. I mean, it's relative. Somebody asked me today, a New York Times reporter asked me today, said, what do you think of the Columbia University sports management program? And I said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. I mean, people are spending a fortune getting extra education and paying consultants when really it's an accident of birth many times.
Bob, questions for Gay?
Gay, I'm wondering, when I think of your dad, I mean, I don't think many people realize how influential he really was when you really look back at some of the things he's done and the time that he owned the team. But I was just wondering, during a lot of lean years down in Tampa Bay at the time, your father was still a very shrewd businessman and very profitable. But did he bring the job home with him a lot of times? I mean, did the losing get to him after a while?
No.
Never.
He was on a building program, and the way these expansion teams started back in the day was very unfair. Nowadays, it's a much more equitable situation, but as an expansion team, each team gave you players that they no longer wanted, and that's how you put together your team. And the players you got players with bad knees, bad attitudes, bad work ethic, players that were too old to really play the game, players that hadn't panned out. You did not get the creme de la creme of the players. You didn't get to pick and choose. The teams didn't have to put forward their best players or even their medium players. And so we knew going in, the two expansion teams, we were starting behind the 8 ball. Now, then the first draft pick was Leroy Selman. He spent his entire career with the Buccaneers, and he was outstanding. But you need more than one defensive lineman to carry a team. And Dad knew that. John McKay knew that. And, you know, the building program had to take a number of years, and it did. And you can't rush it knowing what you're starting with. You have to build through the draft, and every year you get just so many players that you could draft.
And Gay, Chris had introduced you as having done so much and continue to do so much with NFL alumni players, and we talk it weekly on this show about CTE and so much that's going on. Was there a certain event, or did this just happen over time? What made you get involved in the first place?
Well, when I was with the Buccaneers, I was friendly with a number of the players. It just happened. I can't explain why you're friends with some people and not others, but I would work out in the workout room because I worked so many hours at the Buccaneers. By the time I got home, I had to put dinner on the table and take care of my children. And I never had time to exercise. So I would take 1 hour every single day and go into the weight room and work out on the machines. And there were often players there sweating next to me, on machines next to me, and we'd start talking. So I knew over the years a lot of players. And what happened was in 2009, I decided to pay a visit to Tampa. I was living in New York and Boston at the time, and I went back to Tampa, and I went to a retired players meeting at a hotel and started talking to them, and I was shocked at how damaged some of them were and how little they knew about the benefits that were available to them through the NFL. And that's when I became supercharged and went into this literally full time as an advocate. And I would say I work between 12 and 14 hours a day as an advocate on behalf of retired players, not just the players that came through the Buccaneers, but all players.
And Gay, you testified before Congress, about some of the things that you experienced and you saw. And I saw a picture, Roger Goodell is there, DeMaurice Smith is there. What did you tell Congress, and were Goodell and Smith supportive, or were they arguing against your points?
They were arguing against me very clearly. But as Roger said when we walked, it's really good in there. And all I did was tell the truth. And that's all you will ever hear come out of my mouth is the truth. So if you ask me a question, you really have to be prepared for the answer. And my children and my friends, the same thing. But what I told the NFL was that the medical doctor in charge of the team does not have the individual player foremost in his mind. He will do anything possible to get that player on the field to score for the team, even to the point of injecting painkillers on the sidelines into hips, knees, and shoulders and pushing the player back out on the field. And I saw that. I witnessed it.
And Gabe, beyond everything that you're doing for the alumni players, as I was doing some research on you, you're an amazing story yourself. I read that you've been battling a rare form of cancer that affects your bone marrows and that you far outlived what the doctors expected for you. How are you doing?
Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing. Clearly only the good die young because I'm still here. When I was diagnosed at age 50, I was either age 54 or 50. I think it was about 14 years ago I was diagnosed. Any website you read or any doctor you would talk to would give you between 5 and 8 years of overall survival. And I'm now at 14 years and a couple of months. So I'm just making the most of every day and, love being alive. I'm really too busy to die right now.
Wow.
Great.
So what's next for you?
I've got to get all of these football players registered for the concussion settlement. And it's a real challenge because they figure that there are somewhere north of 20,000 players that need to be registered. And we've only registered 10,000. And that was starting February 7th. So by August 7th, we've got to round up the remaining players and get them registered for this concussion settlement. Because if they do not register by August 7th, they will never have the ability to register after that and claim the funds that they may be due. And the settlement covers them. It's sort of like an insurance policy. It covers them for the next 65 years. And if they are healthy today, God bless them. But you don't know what will happen with the buildup of concussions and the tau protein. You don't know what will happen to you and your body 5 years from now. But if you don't register, you will have no ability to submit a claim after August 7th of this year.
So how do the players either reach out to you or go register? Where do they need to go?
The best thing to do is you do not need an attorney, and I cannot emphasize that strongly enough. Attorneys are taking advantage of these players and charging 20% and upward, and that's highway robbery. All the player has to do is go to nflconcussionsettlement.com. There is a simple form, name, address, social security number, teams that you played with. You fill it out, you fold it up, and you mail it to the address on the website. It's in Manassas, Virginia, or you can scan it and send it by email. You can have your wife, your brother, your best friend fill it out for you as long as you sign it. But there is nothing complicated about doing this document. The settlement office will contact you later about what other information they need. But the first and foremost thing is to get that document signed into the office.
Well, Gay, it's great stuff what you're doing, and as Bob said, we partner with the NFL Alumni Association. We've got a lot of feelings towards a lot of the players that we we're blessed to have on this show. We've seen a lot of guys dealing with lots of different things, broken bodies, dealing with migraine headaches, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise. So thank you for what you're doing to help get these guys registered and get them the benefits that they deserve. It really is a wonderful service that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it, and any way you can help me reach these players would be most appreciated.
Absolutely. I wrote down the website, and we will certainly be publicizing that to all of our guests. Thank you so much for the work you're doing again. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming on.
All. It was great to talk with you guys. Take care.
Take care.
All right, you too, Gay.
Bye-bye.
That is Gay Culverhouse. And, Bob, we can't thank her enough for her involvement. And, she's talking about, the number of hours she's putting in to get these guys registered. Like you mentioned a moment ago, so many of the guys that we talk to are having issues with whether it's, broken bodies or dealing with, things, cognitive issues. Jeff Harrod comes to mind. It breaks my heart, to see, the broken fingers and all the surgeries that he's had to go to. But dealing with things like, he can't be in crowded places, he can't be in noisy places, light bothers him. We hear those stories all the time, and to know that she is out there advocating for these guys is just outstanding.
Incredibly strong person, Chris, and very intelligent. Dr. Gay Culverhouse, by the way. And she, again, what she's doing, it echoes a lot of what the other people we've spoken to that are involved with CTE, Chris. That problem is getting through to a lot of these guys who won't come forward or can't come forward due to their condition or are just not aware of the outlets. And it's women like Dr. Culverhouse who are making the difference out there. And anything we can do as far as, like you said, publicizing it, getting it out there, I think we owe it to a lot of the guys who have given us so much joy over the years.
Absolutely right. And to think she's doing all of that while she's battling her own very rare form of cancer. Unbelievable. And like she said, far outlived what doctors ever thought she could. Amazing story. Amazing woman.
God bless her. Yep.
All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the Positive. Hear which players are doing great things in their communities. We'll do that, then we'll wrap up the show on the other side of these words from our friends over at Coastal Orthopedics and Kyvan Foods.
Are you suffering from ongoing pain from athletic injuries in your knees, shoulders, or hips? Tired of living your life with an old injury that just won't go away? If you answered yes to either of these questions, we can help. Dr. Peter Candelora and his experienced staff of medical professionals will get you back on the road to recovery. Their state-of-the-art facility and new medical technology will ensure you'll be enjoying life again in no time. Since 1991, Dr. Candelora has been specializing in joint replacement, athletic injuries, and general orthopedics. Visit us on the web at athleteinjuries.com or call our office at 888-825-1150. That is 888-825-1150. We're proud sponsors of the Gridiron Greats Assistance Fund.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcon tight end, and I'm the owner of Kyvan Foods. And if you enjoy delicious food, you're going to love my Kyvan products, which consists of our honey apple salsa, sweet barbecue sauce, and an array of seasonings. For store locations, online orders, and recipes, check out our website at www.kyvan82.com. That's Kyvan 82.com. One taste, and you'll appreciate the goodness.
Hey, welcome back. This is Todd Washington, two-time Super Bowl champ, offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and you are listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with my boys Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Go get them, guys.
Hey, we're back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. And I think we've turned it on a couple of times, unbeknownst to ourselves, during the course of the show. Bob, who do you have for us this week?
Yeah, well, the reason I love this segment and the show in general, Chris, is because I learned so much. And doing preparation for this segment of the show, you just come across so much great stuff out there. And I had known for a long time about John Dornbos of the Philadelphia Eagles, their long snapper, what kind of talented guy he was. But then when you look into his home life and what got him to the NFL, Chris, again, it brought me back to what Terry Glenn said. Not the easiest upbringing. This is a guy, my goodness, can you get any worse than this? Guys, Chris, he was 12 years old when he saw his father murder his mother. And this is a guy that kind of took that and turned it in. He had to do something to kind of turn his life around. Not only did he turned to athletics, obviously, but he also became a magician, believe it or not. Something about magic made him very relaxed, and he thought he could give back to kids by doing that. It just took him away from, I guess, the abnormal life that he had grown accustomed to. So that was how he got into magic. This guy's got onto the show America's Got Talent, and again, he did a lot of great things. But again, he unfortunately had surgery on his wrist in December this year. But he is an incredible special teams player. But he does have his own foundation, Chris. He does a lot for the Center for Grieving Children, Adopt Together. You'll see him on the NFL website posing with some handicapped people. He does a lot of it. And again, it'll say on that NFL website, his philosophy, his attitude is everything. It seems like a cliche, but for him it works. But quite the life, and a guy who is giving back and making the most out of what can we say, a hellish situation early in his life. So kudos to John Dorenbos tonight.
Yeah, that's a great story, Bob. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Vernon Turner, just when we think about, tragic, things that happen when you're a kid. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bob, we've talked a lot about the Patriots tonight, so this week I want to put the spotlight on the positive on Patriots safety Devin McCourty. For the second year in a row, he's been nominated for the Byron Whizzer White Award, which recognizes players for going above and beyond in their service to the community. Devin and his twin brother, Jason, are both nominated, actually, for the award this year by the NFL Players Association. The McCourty brothers, they partner with the Sickle Cell Foundation, and they did so back in 2013, starting in 2013, and they're raising money and awareness to help fight against the disease. The sickle cell trait, affects approximately 100,000 African Americans, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, including 1 in 365 new African American births each year. The McCourtys have hosted multiple blood drives and fundraising events, increasing awareness and blood donors to help combat the effects of the sickle cell trait. Devin McCourty has been, a great leader on the team and a role model in the community for the Patriots since they drafted him in the first round back in 2010. Their campaign, it aims to educate the public, increase blood donations, and raise money and awareness, obviously, to fight against the disease. While neither of the McCourty brothers has the disease, their father, their uncle, and their aunt all do. And according to Devin, growing up, they were very close to their Aunt Winifred, and, she battles the disease daily, going through many trials and tribulations that are associated with it. Her passion to keep fighting through everything that, comes her way has driven the boys to, to try to make a difference and draw awareness to fight, this terrible disease. And on top of what Devin does for sickle cell, in 2013, he pledged to donate $100 for every tackle and $200 for every interception to help the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. He ended up donating $8,000 that year based on his stats. So kudos to Devin McCourty and to his brother, Jason, for all that they are doing in the New England community and to help fight sickle cell. So, Bob, another great couple of stories tonight.
Yeah, it was an incredibly inspiring show. Glenn, Iannuzzi, we can go on, and you just have such a great feeling when you bring up stories and people like this, and you can't get it any better, too much better than those guys we had on tonight, and girls. It was great, Chris.
Yeah, and to your point, Bob, we got to do a better job of making sure that we continue to highlight all of the great things that, the guests on this show tonight are doing, each and every day, in their communities. The Marco Iannuzzis, the Terry Glenns, and the Gay Culverhouses, for all the great things that they continue to do. So our kudos and thanks to them, not only for being a part of the show, but for the great stuff that they're doing. All right, Bob, it is time for us to put a bow on this episode of TNT. Again, our thanks to Russell Baxter, Tony Collins, Marco Iannuzzi, Terry Glenn, and Gay Culverhouse for joining us tonight. And, Bob, as always, thank you, my friend. It's always the best to get to share Thursday nights with you.
I appreciate it, Chris. Again, a beautiful show like that makes up for a very tough week up here in New England. So we'll start from scratch next week.
That's right. And so who are we going to have join us next week? Well, our new good friend, a guy that we're becoming very fond of very rapidly, is former Colts fullback Roosevelt Potts, and he's going to be back with us on the show. We had a great time when he joined us here on this show, and Bob, I know you enjoyed him on the TV side with you and Tony as well.
Yeah, he was he told a lot of the same stories, but even added a lot of new stuff, Chris. Another guy who'll be very inspiring. If you haven't heard him speak, you'll hear a guy that came from some humble beginnings and admits he had some tough times, but has put it all in the rearview mirror. Great guy.
We'll also be joined by former Patriots Pro Bowl quarterback Drew Bledsoe. Be back with us. Another good friend and a wonderful support of the show. We're excited to have on for the first time next week. Tom Murphy will be here. And if you're not following Tom on Twitter, you really should be. Follow him at TMurph207. So at TMurph207. Looking forward to having Tom with us on the show. Plus, of course, Tony Collins will be here. He joins us every single week. So looking forward to get more stories and insights from Tony. So we're going to have a lot of fun next week. We hope you'll come back and be a part of the show with us. Want to remind you how you can follow us on social media. Well, on Facebook, we've got a Facebook page for the show, Thursday Night Tailgate. Plus, Bob and I both have our own Facebook pages as well. Give us a like. That's very important on our Thursday Night Tailgate page. On Twitter, you can find me at CT-mascaro. Bob is at bob_lazzari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Plus, you can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free by going on our great friends over at Podbean. So thankful for Podbean for all the great support that they are giving us. You know, they've got us as a featured show both online on their site podbean.com and on their mobile app as well. We are right there on their sports and recreation section as well, front and center. So very much appreciate all the support that Podbean has given us. You can also find the show as a podcast on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Audio Boom, Player.fm, and SoundCloud as well. So you can take us with you anywhere you go, and you can stay up to date with all the great things we're doing by checking us out on any one of those wonderful sites right there on your smartphone. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great week, and many thanks also to our announcer, Joe LaGianusa, for the great job he does with our weekly intro and ads, and to James Brocato and all the guys from Painted Faces for our upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, thanks to everyone tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. We miss you.